February 2026, two American supercarriers sit on opposite edges of a region holding its breath. One guards the Persian Gulf. The other waits in the Mediterranean. Both are nuclear powered. Both are armed. And both in this moment are limited by something no missile can destroy. But geometry. Because modern war doesn't begin with an explosion. What can you see? Out in the Mediterranean, 100,000 tons of steel floats calmly. Reactors hum. Radar arrays rotate. Missile cells sit armed beneath the deck. Everything is ready. But readiness without vision is paralysis. The carrier deliberately holds position far from hostile shores. Distance keeps it outside ballistic missile arcs. Distance creates friction. Radar beams travel in straight lines. The earth curves. Mountains block. But and beyond that horizon sits a dense network of long-range radar systems and surface-to-air missiles. The fleet has weapons that can hit target hundreds of miles away. But if you cannot see the target, you cannot shoot the target. That's the paradox. The most advanced warship ever built, blind beyond the curve of the planet. Across the region, layered radar systems sweep the sky. Anti-air batteries sit in hardened positions. Electronic warfare units listen for any radio emission. Turning on a standard radio transmission inside that environment would be like lighting a flare in a dark room. Every signal is a confession. Every broadcast is a location. So the fleet cannot simply turn up the volume. It needs eyes inside the threat zone. High, stealthy, survivable, the answer exists, but it doesn't belong to the Navy. It belongs to the Air Force. The F-22 Raptor, designed for air dominance. Designed to supercruise at supersonic speed without afterburner. Sufficient to kill before being seen. But the Raptor has a weakness. Unfuel its internal weapons base limit internal fuel space. It was built for violent, short engagements, not transatlantic marathons. You cannot teleport fighters across oceans. You drag them, that mission has a name. To cross the Atlantic, Raptors attach external drop tanks. Fuel increases. Range increases, so does radar signature, so does drag. Now the world's most advanced stealth fighter depends on a chain of aerial refueling tankers stretching thousands of miles. Tankers are large, slow, visible. They are the lifeline. And lifelines can snap. Initial launch attempts were scrubbed due to technical issues with refueling aircraft, not pilot error, industrial friction. And in military aviation, discipline means aborting when conditions aren't perfect. The mission reset, recalculated. Then the air bridge formed, refuel, leapfrog, refuel again. Maintenance crews worked through freezing nights. Then the final push. One aircraft suffered a fuel system issue and returned. The rest pressed forward. Eventually, they landed in the desert. They had beaten gravity. They had beaten drag, but they had not yet solved the deeper problem, communication. The F-22 communicates using a directional stealth data link, narrow beam, low probability of intercept, low probability of detection. The Navy uses link 16, broadcast, omnidirectional. If the Raptor transmits openly on link 16, it tears a hole in its stealth. So now the most lethal fighter in the world sits within range of the battle space, unable to safely talk to the fleet. That is a broken kill chain. The solution came from altitude. A high-flying reconnaissance aircraft capable of operating above 70,000 feet. From that height, the horizon expands dramatically. Inside it, specialized computing systems ingest data from multiple sources. The stealth fighters transmit quietly upward. The high-altitude aircraft interfacts, translates, and relays the information downward to naval vessels. It becomes a bridge, old technology fused with new. Now the network is connected. But before striking, the battlefield must be mapped. A stealth aircraft slip into contested airspace in silence. They do not fire. They listen. Every radar pulse has a fingerprint person's. Electronic support systems detect those emissions, triangulate. Pinpoint coordinates, a digital map forms. That map flows back to sea. Then the electromagnetic assault begins. Their mission is not stealth. It is saturation. Jammers activate. Targeted radiation floods hostile radar receivers. False returns multiply. Real tracks disappear. Confusion spreads. For a brief window, the radar wall fractures. And that fracture is all the high altitude fighters need. At 50,000 feet, moving faster than Mach 1 without afterburner, Raptors push forward. Thin air reduces drag. Energy is preserved. Then a new threat appears: low-altitude cruise missiles and drones moving toward the fleet. An inexperienced pilot might dive and engage, but diving sacrifices altitude, sacrifices energy. Instead, the pilot stays high. Sensors lock. Then downward to the fleet. A destroyer calculates intercept solutions. Vertical launch cells explode open. Missiles climb, guided by airborne data. The destroyer never saw the threats with its own radar. Information solved the problem. That is modern warfare. But blinding radar systems creates desperation. Older fighter aircraft scramble. Infrared sensors active. Afterburners burning bright. They hope to force a close range engagement to drag the stealth fighters low to negate advantage. The Raptors refuse. They climb higher. Thin air. Low drag. Energy. Stored like currency. Beyond visual range, missiles eject. Weapons loft into the upper atmosphere, converting altitude into acceleration. Converting altitude into acceleration. The enemy receives warning tones seconds before impact. Mach 4 does not negotiate it. The airspace empties. With the corridor open, heavier strike aircraft move in bombers. Bombers carrying penetrating munitions. Carrier-based strike fighters loaded heavy drummen. The spear clears. The hammer follows. And from a distance, it looks like overwhelming force. And from a distance, it looks like overwhelming force. And from a distance, it looks like overwhelming force. And from a distance, it looks like overwhelming force. But the real power was not in the explosions. It was in the architecture of stealth fighter built for dogfights, repurposed as a forward sensor. A reconnaissance aircraft from another era acting as translator. Electronic attack jets shaping the electromagnetic environment. Destroyers firing based on targeting data they never collected themselves. A carrier staying distant yet lethal. Power is not size alone. It is integration. It is discipline. The transatlantic ferry mission exhausted crews and aircraft. Maintenance teams worked in brutal conditions. Fuel burned by the millions of pounds. All to position a handful of aircraft at exactly the right altitude, because altitude changes geometry, and geometry decides what can be seen destroyed. Modern warfare is not loud at first. It begins with listening, with mapping, with connecting networks. Then at the precise moment advantage appears, it strikes. The carrier did not move closer. It extended its eyes upward. It extended its eyes upward. It respected physics. It solved the equation instead of trying to overpower it. And that is the lesson. You do not intimidate geometry. You work around it. You do not arc. With physics, you integrate through it. In today's battle space, victory belongs to the side that connects platforms into one organism. Steel, silicon, altitude, energy, precision. That is how distance becomes advantage. That is how blindness becomes dominance. And that is how modern war is truly fought.